The storm came without warning. The sky turned red like fire and thunder rolled across the endless desert of Xylar, a planet where even metal burned in the rain. Inside a small outpost, Dr. Alara Voss worked alone. She was a human engineer, one of the last few still living on this forgotten world. Her weather station had been her home for almost 2 years. She fixed machines, studied the skies, and sent reports that no one ever answered. The Galactic Union had moved on, leaving her behind. Outside, the wind howled like screaming ghosts. Lightning cut the clouds in white and blue lines. Ilara was repairing the satellite dish when her scanner beeped. Something was moving out there, maybe 5 kilometers away. At first, she thought it was just debris flying in the storm. But then she saw shapes. 3 dark figures struggling against the wind. She froze. There shouldn't be anyone here. Ilara grabbed her scope and zoomed in. What she saw made her heart race. The figures weren't human. Their skin shimmered under the lightning. Their armor dented and covered in dust. One of them stumbled and fell hard onto the sand. Another tried to pull him up but collapsed beside him. Only one kept moving, dragging the others forward through the deadly storm. Ilara's mind screamed, "Don't go." Her training told her it was suicide to go out in a plasma storm. The wind could tear her suit apart in seconds. But something inside her, something deeply human, wouldn't let her stay still. She couldn't watch living beings die while she stood safe behind steel walls. She ran to the airlock, sealing her helmet. The storm hit her like a hammer. Every step felt like walking through fire. The sand cut her visor and her body shook with each thunder blast. She reached the fallen figures and knelt beside the one still breathing. His face was half hidden behind a cracked mask, his skin dark silver with faint blue veins glowing beneath it. Alien, but alive. "I've got you," she shouted through the comm, though she wasn't sure he could hear. One of them tried to push her away weakly. "Leave us," he groaned. "Go back." "You'll die too." Ilara ignored him. She dragged the first body onto a hover sled and then the second. The storm screamed around her, tearing the straps, trying to lift her off the ground. Her strength was fading, her oxygen low, but she didn't stop. Every step was a battle against death itself. Finally, she reached the outpost and slammed the airlock door shut. The storm crashed behind her like a living monster. For a moment, she just stood there, shaking, trying to breathe. Then she looked down at them. 3 alien bodies on her floor. Their armor bore strange symbols she didn't recognize. One was badly injured, deep burns across his chest. Another had a broken arm, his pulse weak. The third, the one who'd tried to walk the farthest, was staring at her silently, his eyes glowing faint orange under his cracked visor. Ilara knelt beside the injured one and began removing his armor plates. The smell of burned flesh filled the air. She grabbed her medkit and began patching him up, her hands moving quickly but gently. The silent one finally spoke, his voice rough and low. "You shouldn't have done this, human." Ilara looked up, surprised. "You were dying." He stared at her, his expression unreadable. "We are outlaws. You help us, they'll hunt you too." She frowned. "Who's they?" He didn't answer. His gaze drifted to the storm outside, still raging against the metal walls. Hours passed. The storm grew stronger. The power flickered, the walls groaned. Ilara worked through the night, giving them fluids, sealing wounds, adjusting the life support system to match their alien biology. She didn't even know their names. When the lights dimmed again, she checked the scanners. Her stomach tightened. A signal was bouncing through the clouds, strong and sharp. It wasn't random, it was a search pattern. Someone was looking for them. She turned toward the leader again. His eyes met hers, tired but alert. He seemed to know what she'd discovered. "They're coming," he said quietly. "And when they find us, the warships will burn this place to ash." Ilara's heart pounded. She glanced at the storm outside, then at the strangers she had saved. She didn't know if she had rescued them, or doomed herself with them. The lightning flashed once more, lighting the room in ghostly blue. For a second she saw fear, not in her own reflection but in his eyes. Whatever they were running from, it was powerful enough to frighten even them. And now, because of her choice, she was part of it. Outside, the storm roared louder. Inside, silence fell heavy. Ilara stood near the airlock, staring at the endless red sky. Somewhere above those clouds, something was coming, and by dawn, it would find her. The storm outside had become a living creature. It roared and clawed at the metal walls, trying to tear the outpost apart. Inside, Dr. Alara Voss moved quietly between the 3 alien strangers she had rescued. Her hands were steady, but her heart wasn't. The room smelled of smoke, metal, and ozone. Machines hummed weakly as backup power flickered. The wounded alien, his chest wrapped in silver bandages, lay motionless on the med table. The other two watched her carefully. Their eyes glowed faintly under the dim lights like embers in the dark. Alara felt their gaze but kept working. She spoke softly, mostly to herself. "Your biology's strange. Triple-lobed heart, high plasma density. But you'll live." The tallest one finally spoke. His voice was deep and calm, like distant thunder. "You risked your life for us." "Why?" She didn't look up. "Because you were dying." He studied her for a long time before replying. "You don't even know who we are?" Alara glanced at him then. His armor was old but strong, marked with strange triangular symbols. His face was lined, battle-worn, someone who had seen too much. "No," she said, "but I can guess. Soldiers, maybe. Or criminals. Doesn't really matter right now." A short silence followed, heavy but not hostile. The second alien, younger and smaller, shifted uncomfortably. "She doesn't understand," he muttered in his own language. The leader, his name she later learned was Kale, replied in a low growl. "Then she will soon." Alara turned on the heat lamp and took off her gloves. Her hands trembled slightly. "Your friend needs rest." That burn nearly reached his heart. "If I hadn't stabilized him, he'd be gone by now." Kyle nodded slowly. "His name is Rin. He's my brother." That word, brother, softened something inside her. She hadn't heard family words in a long time. She'd been alone on this world for 2 years, abandoned by the very people she had trusted. She stepped back and poured herself some water. "You should know," she said quietly. "There's a Union signal sweeping the sky. Somebody's looking for you." Kale's jaw tightened. They always are. Now she looked at him properly. Those sharp eyes, the scars along his neck, the thin line of exhaustion on his face. He wasn't just running. He was surviving. "Who are you, really?" she asked. Kale took a long breath. "We were soldiers once, loyal to the Galactic Union. But when they ordered us to destroy a human colony, your colony, we refused. They called it treason." Alara froze. "You refused to kill humans?" "Yes," Kale said. "So they decided to kill us instead." The room went silent again. Only the storm filled the space between them. Alara felt a strange mix of fear and respect. These weren't monsters. They were exiles, hunted for doing the right thing. After a while, the power flickered again. The lights dimmed. She cursed under her breath and grabbed her toolkit. "Reactor's dying," she muttered. "If it shuts down, we lose oxygen control." Without a word, Kale stood up and followed her. "I can help," she hesitated. "You know fusion tech?" He gave a small grin. "We built the kind you're using." Together they worked in silence. Sparks flew, wires hissed. Ilara's small hands moved fast, Kale's large ones steady beside hers. The storm kept hammering the roof, but for the first time she didn't feel alone. At one point she glanced up and met his eyes. There was something there, a quiet understanding between survivors. "You shouldn't trust me," Kale said softly. "I don't," she replied, tightening a bolt. "But I don't hate you either." That made him laugh, a low, tired sound. When the reactor finally roared back to life, warm light spread through the outpost again. Rin stirred on the med table, whispering something weakly in his alien tongue. His brother was by his side instantly. Alara leaned against the wall, catching her breath. Her body ached, but her mind was racing. These aliens had risked their lives for humans before, and now she had risked hers for them. Maybe fate had strange ways of choosing allies. She checked the radar once more. A red mark blinked on the screen. A ship had entered the upper atmosphere, small, fast, and armed. Kale saw it too. "That's a scout." "The Union has found our trail." Ilara's stomach dropped. "They'll trace the signal straight here." Kyle's tone was grim. "Then we leave before dawn," she frowned. "You can't, the storm's not over. You step outside, you'll melt before you make it a mile." He turned to face her, his orange eyes burning under the lights. "Then you'll die with us." Alara didn't flinch. "If I wanted to die, I would have stayed outside that storm." For a long moment, they stared at each other, two survivors from different worlds, human and alien, both betrayed by the same empire. Then Kyle looked away. "You're a strange species, human. You save enemies without asking why." She smiled faintly. "Maybe that's why we're still here." As the storm began to fade, Alara checked her systems one last time. The scanner beeped again, more ships now approaching orbit. The signal grew stronger with every second. Kale turned to her, his face tense. You shouldn't have saved us. Alara looked out the window where lightning still danced. Across the red horizon. Maybe not, she said quietly, but I did. And now? We finished what fate started. The lights dimmed again. Outside, something massive moved through the clouds. Shadows of warships searching for their prey. And deep inside that small human outpost, 3 fugitives and 1 lonely human prepared for the long night ahead, unaware that by dawn, the sky would no longer belong to the storm. The storm had finally quieted, but the silence that followed was worse. It felt like the calm before something terrible. The air outside the outpost still glowed faint red, lightning flickering faintly on the horizon like dying embers. Inside, the lights were dim, running on half power. Dr. Alara Voss sat beside the sleeping alien, Rin, his chest rising slowly under the silver medical bandages. Across the room, Kyle, the outlaw leader, stood near the window staring into the storm. His body was tense like a soldier waiting for the next command. Alara had been awake for 20 hours straight. Her hands shook as she sipped cold water from a tin cup. She could still taste the metallic dust in the air. Every few minutes she glanced at the radar. The signal from orbit was still there, small dots moving closer, searching. Kale finally spoke without turning around. They won't stop, you know. Once the Union marks someone, there's no escape. Alara sighed. I figured that out when I saw my name appear on their blacklist. He turned to her sharply. What do you mean? She pointed to the console. Your pursuers sent a tracking pulse through the storm. My scanner caught it. Their AI flagged me as an accomplice the moment I took you in. So congratulations, we're all criminals now. Kale's expression darkened. You should have let us die. Too late, she said dryly, standing up. Now we're in this together. The younger alien, Tarek, who had stayed quiet until now, frowned. You talk as if you have a plan. Alara walked to her workbench, brushing away metal parts and dust. Plans are for people with time. We have a deadline. Kyle watched her curiously. What are you doing? Fixing what you broke, she said. Your ship's thruster core, it's in bad shape, but I think I can get it running again. He blinked. You were in my ship? Someone had to drag it out of that crater. You're lucky I'm a mechanic. Kale stared at her for a long moment. Why help us again? Alara stopped working and looked him straight in the eyes. Because you said you refused to destroy humans. Because maybe you're not the monsters they say you are. And because the Union left me to die here too. There was silence again, heavy, thoughtful. Tarek looked away, uneasy. Kel, this is madness. She's human. If they find out we're working with her. They already have, Alara interrupted. And when they get here, they won't ask questions. They'll just erase us all. Kale slowly stepped closer, his voice calm but heavy. So what's your idea, Doctor? She opened a map of the region. The terrain was harsh. Lava fields to the east, magnetic storms to the north, and abandoned mining tunnels under their feet. If we go underground, we might hide from their scanners for a while. But your ship needs fuel and power. I can get you both if you help me. Kale crossed his arms. Help you do what? Alara pointed at the flickering radar screen. There's an old Union relay tower in the western canyons. It has a fusion cell strong enough to recharge your ship, but the area's unstable. It's suicide to go alone. He raised a brow. And you expect me to trust you? She smirked faintly. You don't have a choice. Neither do I. For the first time, Kale smiled, just a small, tired smile. A human making deals with outlaws. Never thought I'd see that. Alara wiped her hands and looked at him seriously. You said once that your kind refused to kill us. Let's see if you can survive working with us instead. Before Kale could answer, a loud bang echoed through the base. The walls shook. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Rin groaned awake, clutching his chest. They found us, Tarek said, panic in his voice. Alara ran to the console, red lights flashing across the screen. A probe just entered the atmosphere. They're scanning the surface. Kale grabbed his weapon, his calm replaced with urgency. We can't fight that here. No, Alara said, already moving. We move through the tunnels, now! They rushed into the storage bay, gathering what little they could. Oxygen tanks, power cells, med packs. Alara stopped beside her workbench, hesitating. She touched the small photo taped to the wall, a picture of her and her old research team smiling before the Union abandoned them. She tore it off and stuffed it in her pocket. Kale noticed. "Someone you lost?" She didn't answer. "Everyone," she whispered, and sealed the hatch behind them. The tunnels beneath the outpost were dark and endless, carved long ago by molten rock. The walls glowed faintly orange from ancient heat. Alara led the way, her flashlight cutting through the dust. The sound of boots and claws echoed softly behind her. Kale kept close, his weapon ready. "You really lived here alone all this time?" "Yes," she said. "It's easier to survive when you stop expecting help." He gave her a long look. "You remind me of humans from the old stories, stubborn, fearless, and reckless." She smiled faintly in the dark. "You forgot one, foolish." They moved deeper into the tunnels. Above them, faint tremors shook the ground. Warships descending. The Union had arrived. When they reached a wide cavern, Alara stopped and knelt beside a hidden panel. "This connects to the mining transport rails. If we power it up, it'll take us halfway to the canyon tower," Tarek hissed. "And if it doesn't?" Alara shrugged. "Then we walk and die tired." Kyle chuckled quietly. "You really don't fear death, do you?" She looked at him, her face lit by the soft glow of the panel. "Fear doesn't change anything." "Action does," the rail hummed to life. Lights flickered along the ancient tracks. The small transport drone rose slowly, covered in dust. Kale helped Rin aboard while Alara checked the controls. Above them, a deep rumble echoed, something massive entering the atmosphere. The air shook like thunder. Kale turned toward the noise. "They're bringing warships," Alara nodded grimly. "Then we'd better move fast." The drone shot forward into the darkness of the tunnel, sparks flying behind it. For a moment, the world was nothing but speed, noise, and shadows. And as they vanished into the underground, the first beam of light from the warships pierced the clouds above, searching for the human who had dared to save Outlaws. The tunnel shook as something heavy passed overhead. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the faint hum of engines echoed through the rock. Dr. Ilara Voss tightened her grip on the railcar handle as it sped through the darkness. Sparks flashed from the ancient track, painting their faces in quick bursts of orange light. Kyle, the outlaw leader, stood beside her, his hand steady on his weapon. Rin, his injured brother, leaned weakly against the wall. The youngest, Tarek, stared at the flickering lights above them, whispering, "They're scanning. I can feel it." Ilara glanced at her wrist scanner. The signal was everywhere. Galactic Union probes sweeping the surface, their sensors searching through stone and metal. "They're getting closer," she said quietly. Kale nodded grimly. "They have our scent." For a few minutes no one spoke. The sound of the rail car drowned out everything except their breathing. Then suddenly the car jerked violently, throwing sparks as it stopped dead. Alara stumbled forward. "What happened?" Kale scanned the tunnel ahead. "Something's blocking the track." They stepped out cautiously. The tunnel widened into a cavern filled with old mining machinery. The smell of burnt oil and rust filled the air. Giant drilling arms lay broken across the tracks. Alara's flashlight flicked on, cutting through the darkness. This used to be a power station. The miners left years ago. Rin groaned as Kale helped him sit down. "Can we rest?" Alara hesitated. "A few minutes." "But not long," Kale nodded. "We'll need to go on foot from here." As Alara opened a control box to check for power, she froze. Her scanner blinked red, a motion signal not far away. "Something's moving," she whispered. Kyle raised his weapon instantly. The air grew cold. A faint metallic sound echoed down the tunnel, like claws scraping against steel. Out of the shadows came a shape, a drone, small and fast with glowing red eyes. It hovered low, scanning the air. Tarek hissed. "They sent trackers." "Stay quiet," Alara whispered, turning off her flashlight. The cavern fell into darkness. The drone's red eyes moved back and forth, searching. Its sensors clicked softly. Then a single drop of water fell from the ceiling, hitting the metal floor with a plink. The drone spun toward the sound and fired. The shot burned through the air, leaving a trail of light. Kyle didn't hesitate. He lunged forward and smashed it with his rifle's butt, the machine sparking and screaming before collapsing. "Too loud," Ilara hissed. "They'll know where we are now." Kale kicked the drone aside. "Then we keep moving." They began running through the tunnels, their footsteps echoing. Behind them, a distant roar began, engines closing fast. The Union's hunters were coming. Ilara's heart pounded as she led them down a side passage. Her scanner flashed again, more signals, dozens of them. "They've deployed more drones," she said. "How many?" Kyle asked. She looked at the screen. "Too many." Suddenly, a bright beam of light sliced through the darkness ahead. A massive mechanical sentinel dropped from the ceiling, its legs slamming into the ground. Its voice boomed in metallic tones. "Outlaws detected. Human accomplice confirmed. Termination authorized." "Run!" Ilara shouted. They dashed through the side tunnels as the sentinel's plasma cannons fired, melting the walls. Behind them, the heat was unbearable. Rocks rained down, cutting off the path behind them. Kale turned and fired his weapon, but the shots only sparked against the sentinel's armor. "It's shielded," he yelled. "Then follow me," Ilara shouted. She ducked into a maintenance shaft, crawling through pipes and wires. The air was hot and filled with dust. Kale dragged Rin behind her, their armor scraping the walls. They emerged into another chamber, a dead end filled with ancient mining drones. Ilara's eyes darted across the machines, searching. Then she smiled faintly. "I've got an idea." She climbed onto one of the old drones, yanked open its power core, and started rewiring it. Kale looked at her, confused. "What are you doing?" "Giving our metal friend a surprise." Outside the chamber, the sentinel's heavy steps grew closer. The walls vibrated. "Almost done," Ilara muttered, sparks flying from the panel. She crossed two wires, and the mining drone's eyes lit up. The sentinel stepped into the doorway. "Resistance futile. Lay down your weapons," Ilara grinned. "You first." She slammed a switch. The mining drone's reactor overloaded, releasing a massive electric surge that exploded through the tunnel. The sentinel screamed, sparks bursting from its body before collapsing into the dust. The shockwave knocked everyone off their feet. When the noise finally faded, only the echo of the explosion remained. Kyle groaned and sat up. "You're insane," Ilara coughed, brushing soot from her face. "And alive." Rin looked at her weakly. "Human tech, dangerous," she smiled tiredly. Human creativity, worse. But their relief was short-lived. Ilara's scanner beeped again, new signals even stronger. "They're not stopping." That explosion gave away our position. Kale stood and looked toward the west tunnel. "Then we head for the canyon tower now." Tarek frowned. "It's still half a day away." Ilara checked her wrist display. "Then we move fast and pray we're not under open sky when they arrive." As they prepared to leave, Kale placed a hand on her shoulder. "You saved us again, human. You don't even realize what that means." Ilara looked up at him, her face tired but determined. "You keep saying that like I'm special." "I'm not." Kale's voice softened. "Maybe not to you, but to the galaxy, you will be." They set off through the tunnels, their path lit only by the faint glow of lava seeping through cracks. Above them, far beyond the rock and storm, the warships of the Union gathered in the sky, and as the hunters spread across the planet, the line between fugitive and hero began to blur. The tunnels opened into a vast canyon that stretched like a scar across the planet. Above, the red storm had weakened, but the sky was still bruised with clouds. Through the cracks in the rock, flashes of light flickered, warships descending slowly, searching. Dr. Ilara Voss led the group along the canyon wall, her scanner glowing faint blue in her hand. Her clothes were torn, her face streaked with dust, but her eyes were sharp. She had been silent for hours, her mind working faster than her mouth. Behind her, Kyle carried his wounded brother Rin, while Tarek followed close, his weapons scanning the ridges above. They moved like ghosts between the rocks, hiding from the drones that flew overhead. Finally, they stopped inside a small cave that overlooked the canyon floor. From here, they could see the reflection of warship lights rippling through the dust clouds. "They're closing the net," Kale said grimly. "Once the storm clears completely, they'll spot us." Ilara crouched near the edge, watching the flickering sky. "Then we'll make them see what we want them to see." Tarek frowned. "What are you planning, human?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she took out a small broken weather beacon from her bag, a piece of old tech the miners once used to track storms. She began to twist wires, connecting it to her scanner. Sparks flew and a faint hum filled the air. Kale watched her. "You're building something," Ilara smiled faintly. "No, I'm faking something." She pointed to the open canyon. "When I used to work for the Galactic Science Council, We studied these storms. The clouds are full of metallic dust. That means electromagnetic interference. If I overload this beacon, I can trick the warship's sensors into thinking there's a massive power source right below the canyon floor. Tarek's eyes widened. They'll bomb it. Exactly, Alara said. They'll waste fire on empty rock while we escape through the tunnels under their feet. Kale stared at her in disbelief. You're going to fool an entire fleet with one broken beacon? Alara gave him a sideways grin. Welcome to human engineering. She crouched again, soldering wires together with a small plasma torch. The hum grew louder as the device came alive, blue sparks dancing across its frame. Rin, still weak, looked up from where he sat. You risk much for us. Alara didn't look at him. I'm already marked as a traitor. Might as well make it count. Outside, the sound of engines thundered through the clouds. The warships were descending lower now, beams of light sweeping across the canyon. The ground trembled as a distant explosion echoed from somewhere far away. Kale crouched beside her. If this works, they'll think we're dead. But if it fails, she cut him off. Then we will be. The beacon pulsed once, twice, then began to glow bright white. Alara connected her scanner, fingers flying across the interface. I'm aligning it with the storm currents. The static will hide the false signal long enough for them to take the bait. Kyle studied her face. Focused, determined, fearless. Humans, he said softly, always turning weakness into weapons. Alara smirked. We call it creativity. She stood and placed the beacon on a flat rock near the mouth of the cave. The hum grew to a deep vibration that made the ground shake. Above, a Union scout ship spotted the energy spike and began to descend, scanning furiously. Tarek tensed. They're coming! Alara watched the sky. Good, let them. Within moments, more ships turned their beams toward the canyon. A command drone broadcasted a metallic voice across the valley. Target lock confirmed. Unidentified fusion core detected. Commencing strike, Alara grabbed her gear. Now we move. They ran into the tunnels below as the sound of plasma bombardment shook the air. Blue fire rained from the sky, tearing the canyon apart. The walls cracked, rocks fell, and the ground erupted in a wave of light. The four fugitives sprinted through the underground passages as the shock waves followed them. The air filled with heat and dust. Kale shielded Rin with his body as the tunnel roof collapsed behind them. When the tremors finally stopped, everything was silent again. Alara coughed, brushing dust from her face. Well, she said, that's one way to erase a trail. Kyle stared at her, half impressed, half horrified. You made them destroy their own search zone. She smiled faintly. They're good at following orders. I'm better at writing bad ones, Rin laughed weakly. Human trick. Dangerous. Tarek shook his head. No, brilliant. Alara leaned against the wall, catching her breath. Her hair clung to her face with sweat. Don't thank me yet. That blast burned through our only exit. We're trapped under the canyon. Kale stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. We'll find another way. You saved us again. She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the faint blue light from the scanner. No, I saved everyone for a few hours. That's all. Kale nodded slowly. For someone abandoned by her own kind, you fight harder than most soldiers I've met. Alara gave a tired smile. That's because humans fight hardest when no one's coming to save them. They stood in silence for a while, listening to the distant rumble of warships still circling above. The false signal had worked, at least for now. Alara opened her scanner one more time. The screen showed a new path, a narrow fissure leading deeper underground. There's still a chance, she said softly. If we follow this path, it might connect to the old relay tower. Kyle tightened his grip on his weapon. Then we move, before your trick stops working. As they disappeared into the dark tunnels once more, the canyon above glowed faintly from the fires of the bombardment. From orbit, the Union commanders believed their mission complete. The fugitives were dead. The human was gone. But deep below the burning surface, in the heart of the rock, the spark of rebellion had just begun to burn. The night was dying when the first light touched the storm clouds. It wasn't sunlight, it was fire. High above the canyons, the sky shimmered with energy beams and burning debris. The Galactic Union warships had opened fire again, their engines glowing like small suns. The air shook, the ground trembled, and the whole planet seemed to groan in pain. Deep below the surface, Dr. Alara Voss and the Outlaws took shelter in the remains of an ancient mining tunnel. The walls were cracked and hot from the bombardment. Dust fell with every blast from above. Alara crouched beside a broken console, typing furiously on her portable scanner. Kale stood behind her, his rifle ready, his eyes watching the tunnel entrance. Rin rested against a wall, breathing hard, his burns still healing. Tarek paced back and forth, restless, his voice tight with worry. "They're destroying everything," Tarek said. "Even the mines." "What are they looking for?" Alara didn't look up. "Us. They still think we're here." "My fake signal worked too well." Kale stepped closer. "Then we keep moving. We find the relay tower and get out of this grave." She stopped typing, the screen's light reflecting in her tired eyes. "Kale, you don't get it. Even if we reach the tower, they'll find us the moment we broadcast a signal. The Union watches every frequency." Kale crossed his arms. "Then what do you suggest?" Alara took a breath. Her hands shook slightly. Not from fear, but from exhaustion. "We don't hide anymore. We go loud," Tarek frowned. "Loud? You mean suicide?" She turned the scanner around so they could see. On the map, dozens of red blips covered the skies, warships, drones, and destroyers. But among them she had marked one green beacon. "That," she said, pointing at it, "is the Central Union Command ship, the Vindicator. It's broadcasting every order to the fleet. If we can jam or rewrite that transmission, we can turn their army against itself." Kale stared at her. "You want to hack the Union flagship?" "With that tiny machine?" She gave a faint smile. "I built this scanner from old mining tech and spare parts. It's not much, but it's human." "That means it cheats," Rin chuckled weakly. "Humans don't need power. They make it." Outside, the ground shook again, harder this time. The ceiling cracked and red light spilled into the tunnel. Kale looked up, then at Alara. "They've found the entrance." Alara's scanner beeped. "They're scanning the tunnels. We have maybe 10 minutes before they break through." Kale looked at his brother, then back at her. "We'll hold them off. You finish whatever madness you're starting." Alara reached out and grabbed his arm. "No, I can't do this alone. You said your people built their weapons using adaptive code. I need your encryption keys to access the Union's command net." Kyle hesitated, torn between reason and instinct. Finally, he nodded. "You'll have them. But once we do this, there's no turning back." She met his eyes, steady and unflinching. There never was. They worked fast. Alara rerouted her scanner into the old comm wires running through the mine. Kale inputted alien symbols into her system, his hands moving like a soldier rebuilding a weapon from memory. Tarek set up explosive charges near the tunnel mouth. Rin, though weak, loaded the last of their rifles. The hum of the scanner grew louder, filling the air with static. Alara's voice was calm, focused. "Once I connect this signal to the tower, it'll broadcast across the entire Union network. Not just here, everywhere. The galaxy will hear what really happened to your people, and what the Union's been hiding." Kyle looked at her in awe. "You'd risk everything for that?" She smiled faintly. "You risked your lives to save humans. It's time we returned the favor." A loud crash echoed down the tunnel. The wall near the entrance exploded and smoke filled the air. Through the dust, Union soldiers appeared, drones and armored troops, their eyes glowing cold blue. Kyle shouted, "They're here!" Tarek pressed the detonator. The explosives blew, collapsing the front tunnel in a roar of fire and rock. The shockwave knocked Alara off her feet, but she held the scanner tight. The connection blinked. Link established. She crawled back to the console and hit the final key. "Signal's live." A second later, her message spread like wildfire through the Union channels. Her voice echoed across the stars, calm, clear, and unstoppable. "This is Dr. Alara Voss of Earth. The Galactic Union lies. They destroy those who refuse to murder. These outlaws are not traitors, they are the last ones with honor. And if you hear this, stand up. Don't let them silence truth again." Kale stared at her, speechless. Rin closed his eyes, tears shining faintly. The tunnel walls glowed red as the war above changed. Some of the ships in orbit hesitated. Others turned their guns, not toward the planet, but toward the Union flagship itself. Kyle looked up at the shaking ceiling. "You've started something bigger than you know." Alara smiled, breathless. "Good." Outside, the first rebel blasts struck the Union fleet. The sky turned into a battlefield of fire and thunder. Dozens of ships broke formation, chaos spreading like lightning. Alara staggered to her feet, clutching the scanner. "We did it," she whispered. "They heard us." Kale put a hand on her shoulder, his voice low but full of respect. You didn't just save us, human. You changed everything. The ground trembled again as the surface began to collapse. We need to go, Tarek shouted. Alara grabbed her gear and together they ran through the collapsing tunnels, illuminated by the glow of the war raging above. When they finally emerged onto the open plains, dawn had come. The storm was gone. The sky burned with hundreds of warships, their trails crossing like fire serpents. Kale looked up in awe. By dawn, the sky is filled with war. Alara gazed upward, her voice soft but full of steel. Then let it begin. The galaxy forgot what humans can do. The camera pulled back, the red planet, the rising sun, and a sky alive with fire and rebellion. The war of truth had begun, and at its heart stood one human woman, small, defiant, and unforgettable. The war had come to the sky. From horizon to horizon, fire lit the heavens. Union warships battled rebel vessels, their plasma trails painting the dawn with ribbons of blue and red. The once silent planet of Xylar had become the center of a storm that would shake the galaxy. On the surface, amid the ruins of shattered rock and flame, Dr. Alara Voss and the Outlaws emerged from the tunnels covered in ash and blood. The wind was hot and heavy with dust, carrying the sound of explosions from above. Alara looked up at the sky, her face streaked with dirt but her eyes bright. We did this, she whispered. They're fighting because of us. Kale, standing beside her, nodded slowly. No, he said. They're fighting because of you. Her scanner beeped weakly in her hand. The message she had sent, the truth about the Union's lies, was still spreading across the stars. Every ship that received it now knew that the traitors were heroes, and the humans they had refused to kill were still alive. The Union's grip was cracking. The galaxy was waking up, but the fight wasn't over. In the distance, a shadow moved through the sky. A massive ship darker than the clouds, its engines roaring like thunder. Kale's face hardened. That's the Vindicator. Their command ship. Alara followed his gaze. The ship was enormous, easily the size of a city. Its cannons glowed as it descended, aiming straight for them. They're coming to end it, Kale said grimly. Alara's scanner flickered and died. She dropped it, her voice calm. Then we end it first. Kale turned to her sharply. No, you've done enough. You'll be killed. Alara met his eyes, steady and fearless. You said once your people refused to kill humans. Well, I refuse to let them kill you. Rin, still weak, looked up at her. What will you do? Alara pointed toward the wreckage nearby. Kyle's damaged ship, half buried under rock and dust. That thing still has a fusion core. If I can overload it, I can create a pulse big enough to knock out the Vindicator's shields. Then the rebels in orbit can finish the job. Tarek stared at her in disbelief. You'll blow yourself up. Alara smiled faintly. Not if I'm fast. Kale stepped forward. No, I'll go. She shook her head. You wouldn't know the sequence codes. It has to be me. Kale's jaw tightened. You're human. You don't belong in this war. Alara looked at the burning sky and then back at him. We all belong in it now. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The ground trembled again as the Vindicator's shadow passed over them, blotting out the rising sun. Kale reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder. If you do this, the galaxy will remember you. She gave a soft, tired smile. Then make sure they remember why. Without another word, she ran toward the wrecked ship. The metal was scorched and hot under her hands. She climbed through the broken hatch and disappeared inside. Kale watched her go, his throat tight, his heart pounding. Tarek turned to him. We can't let her. Kale raised a hand. No, she's already chosen. Inside the wreck, the air was thick with smoke. Alara moved quickly through the narrow corridors, her flashlight flickering. Sparks danced around her as she reached the fusion chamber, a pulsing core still glowing faintly blue. Her fingers flew across the controls, overriding safety locks. Come on, she muttered. Just one last miracle. The system beeped. Core overload sequence armed. Detonation in 2 minutes. Alara smiled faintly, tears burning her eyes. That'll do. She opened her comlink. Kel, when I say go, you and the others need to run. Don't look back. His voice crackled through the static. Alara, promise me, she said softly. You get Rin to safety. Humanity's not done yet. Outside, the Vindicator was descending, its cannons glowing brighter. Kale's team ran for cover as the ground began to shake. Alara looked up one last time through the broken cockpit. The sky was a sea of fire and light, she whispered to herself, for every voice they tried to silence. Then she pressed the final command. The fusion core erupted in a burst of pure white energy. The shockwave raced across the canyon, tearing through rock and sky. For a heartbeat, the entire world went silent, and then the Vindicator's shield shattered. The massive ship cracked open, its engines exploding like suns. The rebel ships swarmed in, striking fast and hard. Within moments, the Union flagship was nothing but falling wreckage. Kale shielded his face from the light. When the fire faded, the sky was clear. The storm was gone. Only pieces of metal drifted slowly down, glowing like stars. Rin whispered, "She did it." Kyle stood in silence, staring at the rising smoke where the wreck had been. His voice broke as he said, "No, she saved us all." The rebels' message echoed across every channel in the galaxy. The human scientist Ilara Voss gave her life to expose the Union's lies. "Let this be the dawn of freedom." Kyle lifted his gaze to the sky. "She was just one human," he said softly, "but she fought like 1,000. Rin smiled faintly through his tears. "That's what humans do. They fight when no one else will." Above them, the morning sun finally broke through the clouds. The war was not over, but the galaxy had changed forever. And somewhere in the silence that followed, as if carried by the wind itself, the stars whispered a name, Ilara Voss, the human who defied the stars.